footprint of Abraham and the main structure of the building, the black box, people are circulating this place. And they continue to do this. They do it 7 times. And then you will see that people are praying. Some people are praying. Some people are circulating this place. So this is what we believe, as you heard and you saw the translation of the verses, when God says to Abraham that I want you to build a house, we believe that this is the house that Abraham he built. And this is, once again, this is the Kaaba, and the whole city is called Mecca. Next one. The only reason I put this inside in the slide is just to give you an idea that cover that goes on the Kaaba, this is how they make that. This is actually, it is Islamic calligraphy of different verses of the Quran, and you will see that this is something that gets changed every single year. Every single year, sometimes it is several months, but you see that there are all these people over here on this table, that table, and this is one huge room. This is one huge room, and everyone is working on this. Now this, this is Islamic calligraphy. This is something that even for an average Muslim, it is very difficult for them to read. But what they do is that they put all this calligraphy together, and they put this on the Kaaba every single year, and they change up the sheet every single year. And once again, this actually, I'm going to say this verse that you see here, this is one of the verses that were recited. That was recited earlier. وَإِذْ جَعَلْنَا الْبَيْتَ مَثَابَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَأَمْنًا. This is the verse over here. It's very hard to even read it, but this is the verse in regards to Abraham. And so what they do is that they try to stitch on verses regarding Abraham, verses that glorify God, and those are the verses that go on to this covering of the Kaaba. This, as you can see, this is only, here you see that there's a lot of pilgrims that are sitting on a small hill. This is actually one of the hills of where Hagar, she ran. What they do is that they will come here, they will sit here, they will make a prayer, and then they will continue. If you go to the next picture, this is actually the way now the Saudi government, they have built this. And this is where this is actually just one side. And there's another side also that they run from one hill, from one side to the other side, and now they have built this even more better. However, this is once again to remember the running and the jogging of Hagar when she was in search of water, because once again, it was so beloved to God. The next one. Once again, this is another picture that I've taken from Google. Where you can see that this is a sky view of where the black box is. You can see that, and how people will run between the 2 points. Next one. This is actually a place called Mina. This is a place called Mina where people, when they go to perform their pilgrimage, they have to spend approximately 3 days there, and they perform a certain amount of rites. We, according to Islamic faith, this is the place where Abraham took his son to sacrifice him initially for God. Of course, it was then replaced, but this is the place where Abraham, he took him. It was not this big. It was big, of course, at that time. But as you can see, all this white that you can see, of course, all in the middle of that's all roads. But all the white that you see, those are all tents. These are tents where pilgrims, when they come, they stay in these tents, and they stay there and they worship God, and they remember God. And then which is the day of Eid, the day of celebration, over there you will see that people, they are sacrificing a ram or a goat or a sheep. But this is the place that we believe that Abraham took his son. Now, even according to Islamic faith, we believe that, once again, Abraham always put God before himself. So in the Quran, there is mention that when Abraham was taking his son to be sacrificed, Satan came and he tried to deceive Abraham at 3 particular times. At 3 particular times, he tried to deceive Abraham, and what Abraham he did was that he picked up stones. He picked up 7 stones and he threw it at Satan to keep him away. And that is something that as Muslims, when they go and they perform this pilgrimage, they have to also do the same thing as Prophet Abraham to remember his actions. And if you go, you will see this. This is the Saudi government now, that what they have done is that they have built 3 different pillars, that these were the 3 different places where Abraham, he was trying to be deceived by Satan. Every single, as you can see, all these pilgrims that are around each one of them, what they're doing is that they are throwing stones at this. Now, this is not Satan himself. This is one thing I want to clarify. This is not Satan himself, because a lot of times what happens is that there's a lot of people and they might be ignorant regarding their religion, but it has been seen that when some people, when they go there, they actually feel like that this is Satan. So they will take a rock and they will throw with all their strength, because they just, due to their hate of Satan. This is not Satan himself, but this is just to remind us that these were the 3 different places where Satan, he was pushed away, and this is where he tried to deceive Abraham. So these are just few pictures that I wanted to share with you. But at the same time, now I want to share with you a clip from a video that which was actually made by a person by the name of Michael Wolf. He comes from his mom, I think so, his mother was a Christian, father was a Jew. He accepted Islam, and in this short video, he explains what Hajj is all about. And this, because Hajj is all about Abraham. It really is Abraham, and the Quran mentions that God told Abraham that I want you to go and make an open announcement regarding this, and people will come in flocks. And as you can see, every single year, 2.5 million Muslims, they gather to perform their pilgrimage. Without further ado, we'll play this video to give you an idea.
For 1400 years, it has been a holy pilgrimage to a sacred site.
For a Muslim raised in Islam particularly, it is very strongly a feeling of coming home.
A site you are forbidden to enter unless you are Muslim. And if you are a Muslim, it is a sacred duty, an act of faith.
There's a sense of return, which really involves the human heart when you come to Mecca.
Tonight, the Hajj, one American's pilgrimage to Mecca. City near the west coast of Saudi Arabia, across the Red Sea from Sudan, and the name of that city is Mecca. 5 times every day, no matter where in the world they are, devout Muslims face in the direction of Mecca to say their prayers. More than 5 million of those Muslims live among us here in the United States, more American Muslims than Jews. Throughout the world, there are more Muslims than Roman Catholics. And if you were inclined to believe that most Muslims are Arabs, you would be wrong. By far the largest number of Muslims come from outside the Middle East, over 150 million from Indonesia alone. At least once in his or her lifetime, every Muslim is expected to make the pilgrimage, or Hajj, to Mecca. This is the time of year, between the 7th and 12th days of the last month of the Islamic year, when the Hajj is made. Usually, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million Muslims come to Mecca each year at this time. And the Saudi government routinely makes pictures of the Hajj available around the world. But for an American reporter to have access to Mecca and the Hajj, he would need to be a Muslim. Which is why we turn to Michael Wolf to take us where no non-Muslim has ever been.
Islam means acknowledging the oneness of God, surrendering to it, cooperating with the way things are.
I am a Muslim. I revere the same God as my Christian mother and my Jewish father. Allah is simply the Arabic word for the God of Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. I find the absence of priests and rabbis attractive. Being a Muslim, God is as near as the veins in my neck. This directness is most apparent on the pilgrimage. You embrace your religion, you take part in a spiritual drama, very public and very personal all at once. The Hajj begins at one of 5 stations specified by the Prophet Muhammad. Here we enter the state of ritual purity called Ihram. For men, the required dress of the Hajj is 2 unstitched lengths of white cotton cloth and a pair of sandals. Women traditionally wear plain forms of their usual dress. The garments are a symbol. The person who wears them agrees not to harm plants and animals or fellow pilgrims. No arguments, no violence. We agree to keep the peace. The garments are a great leveler, too. Who can tell rich from poor? At the start, I have to accept how naked and frail I feel in these bath towels and try to remember what they mean. They're hard to get used to at first because, in a way, they put an end to my everyday identity. I set aside what I thought made me special, my roots as an American, my work as a writer, my worries, aspirations, all my plans. Here I join people from all over the earth. All these human beings drawn at the same time simply by the call of an idea, by the oneness of God. Pilgrims recite a special set of verses, announcing their readiness to serve God. Here I am, Lord, at your service. Here I am. You have no equal. I am here. Truly, the praise and the favor are yours, and the kingdom. You have no equal. As we all approach Mecca, that long imagined city, there is a little uncertainty. What will it really be like? Will I perform the Hajj without error? Will it be acceptable to God? To preserve its sanctity and protect pilgrims, the sacred territory around Mecca is forbidden to all but Muslims. It lies hidden in the mountains 50 miles from the Red Sea, a modern city of 1.2 million people. Oh, there's the minaret. As we arrive, the great mosque plays hide and seek with us, tantalizing glimpses of a minaret and arch come and go in the traffic. This is the center of the Muslim world. There are people from everywhere.
I'm from Nigeria.
From Islamabad.
From Egypt. Indonesia. Morocco.
From Palestine.
China. Bangladesh.
Japan.
And the United States. I meet a group of American servicemen, Muslims, many of them veterans of the Gulf War 6 years ago. Here in Mecca, that conflict seems so distant.
Islam showed me that all mankind could be together. So when I see another brother, as soon as I meet these brothers on the way, I love them at first for the sake of Allah.
This is something that America can learn from this situation, from this religious experience, that all of mankind can get along.
We have left daily life behind and come to a place hardly belonging to this world, a place filled by the almost tangible presence of God. All their lives in mosques around the world, Muslims have formed into straight rows to face the Kaaba. Now, and only in Mecca, these prayer lines become circular. This is the sacred Kaaba, the house of God first built by Abraham. It is the symbol of God's oneness. The verses embroidered in gold are from the Quran. Behold, the first temple ever set up for mankind, rich in blessings, a source of guidance for the world, full of clear messages. And anyone who comes here finds inner peace.
I feel like I see all my brothers in rainbow colors, but they are all Muslims. And I'm proud to see them, and I stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
In the year 610, on the tallest mountain above Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad received the first verses of the Quran. By the time of the Prophet's death, Islam reached well beyond Mecca into the greater Middle East. A vast majority of the world's Muslims, 80%, now live outside the Middle East. There are more than 5 million in the U.S. Walking around the block in Mecca is a walk around the world. I step out the door and for 15 yards I'm in Indonesia. Down the street past a couple of stores and it's Africa. Pakistan is just around the corner. Look, here's Bangladesh. Where I live, most people think of prayer as a private affair reserved for the bedside, the graveside, the Sunday service. For a Muslim, when the hour arrives, the whole world turns into a mosque, including this crowded market. We hear the call and lay out our carpets. I borrow one from a bookstore owner. When the prayer ends, a few minutes later, people fold their carpets and continue on their way. In Mecca, the formal rites of the pilgrimage begin in the Great Mosque. We follow in the path of the Prophet Muhammad, who created the Hajj from a collection of much older rites. The first obligation is to circle 7 times around the Kaaba, following the direction of the earth around the sun. We surround the foundations of our religion. This is a form of prayer, an expression of our desire to put God at the center of our lives. Each circuit begins and ends at the Black Stone, the symbolic cornerstone of Islam, the only remnant of Abraham's original building. The Prophet Muhammad once touched it with his lips, and some pilgrims kiss the stone today. Most make do with a gesture, like people warming their hands before a fire. After 7 circuits, I go downstairs to drink from the Zamzam well. Without the water from this well, Mecca could never have existed. In the second obligation, we reenact an ancient family drama, the story of a mother and son abandoned in a desert. Here, Hagar ran 7 times back and forth between the hills of Safa and Marwa in a desperate search for water. Finally, the Zamzam well was revealed to her by God. The story dramatizes God's compassion for those in need, a reminder never to give up hope, to keep moving in the direction of salvation.
You should go with the flow, you should go with the movement, you know?
Yes.
Because it's like a sea of people just carrying on and on and on, and eventually, you know, you get into this flow that you're not yourself, because you give yourself totally over to your Creator, Allah.
There are some 2 million of us here. So many of us have come from so far away, all sharing in one purpose, all offering our pilgrimage to God. But all of this is really just the beginning. Pilgrims follow the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad toward the plain of Arafat. The majority of us make the journey on foot, about 5 miles in 90-degree heat. Despite the cooling spray, it is not an easy trip. Cold water is provided, and in some places, bread and fruit. Anonymous donations for poor pilgrims date back to the beginnings of the Hajj. Finally, the plain of Arafat, where Adam and Eve are said to have been reunited after leaving the garden. A sort of lost and found.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Syed Ali and I'm one of the board members at the Eastern Islamic Center, and I am very delighted and excited that you all are here today. Now we'd like to have it more interactive, open it up for question and answers. I think you have a pretty good idea of what Muslims believe in, what are the practices that Muslims have in Islam. And we do have a lot of shared practices among us. So the whole purpose of this gathering was to explore some of the shared practices that we have as American Muslims with other people of other faiths like Christianity and Judaism. So I'm going to open up the floor for any questions and answers that you might have, and we'll try to address it. Me and the Imam here. If you have any questions.
Why is the Quran recited in Arabic?
Why is the Quran recited in Arabic? That is the question. So before I answer that, let me also begin by greeting all of you with Islamic greeting of peace, which is known as Assalamu alaikum, right? The meaning of that greeting is peace be with you. And Muslims throughout the world, from North Africa all the way to Indonesia, they greet each other with that greeting of peace, and that's recited in Arabic. And most of us, like myself for example, I'm not a native speaker of Arabic, but I do know how to recite Arabic. And Muslims believe that Quran is the literal word of God. And many Muslims actually memorize the Quran in Arabic, even though they're not able to speak Arabic. Our Imam right here, he is a Texan. He was born here in the United States. He's a native of Texas, but he is a Hafiz. And also, our Imam who actually recited the Quran at the beginning of this presentation, he is a Hafiz, which means that he has memorized the Quran, the entire Quran from cover to cover in Arabic.
To actually get to the question, what the gentleman was asking is that why is the Quran recited only in Arabic? The simple answer to that is because it was revealed also in the Arabic language. And when we recite the Quran, we are actually telling ourselves that this is the way it was revealed from God to Prophet Muhammad. Now, you will see that the Quran has then been translated into all the other languages from different countries. However, we will see that in the prayers, when we pray 5 times a day, regardless of who you are and where you're from, whether you are a native speaker or not, the Quran will always be recited in the Arabic language because that is the way it was revealed from God.
One of the questions that is commonly asked about Muslims is, what is the purpose behind our belief and our acts of worship? The Imam actually covered some of our beliefs and our acts of worship. So if you can imagine the beliefs of Muslims, which are known as the 6 articles of faith. This is similar to in Christianity as the Nicene Creed in Christianity, for example. Similarly, or the 10 Commandments in Judaism. If you imagine these articles of faith as the roof of a building, you need some support for that roof. And those are the 5 practices or the 5 pillars of Islam, which the Imam actually covered. And these 5 pillars are similar to what you find in Christianity, like the 7 sacraments, that includes baptism, Eucharist, penance, salvation, matrimony, etc. So those are the 5 pillars. They are supporting the roof, which are the 6 articles of faith for Muslims. And the whole reason behind the beliefs and the practices of Muslims is to achieve one thing, which is a concept which is known as the ihsan in Arabic, which means to achieve excellence in whatever we do, to establish a spiritual relationship with God, and to also how we interact with other human beings, being ethical, being moral, and being spiritual. So the essence of the whole worship for Muslims, the beliefs and practices, is to attain a state which is known as ihsan, or excellence. And this is similar to other faith traditions like Christianity and Judaism also, where you strive to uphold the golden rule. The golden rule is doing unto others as you have them do unto you. So the same concept applies for Muslims, and that's the whole purpose of the belief and practices of Muslims.
A question that has come is that why do we pray 5 times a day? Which is a very good question. First of all is that when prayer was made mandatory upon Muslims, we believe that Angel Gabriel, he came to the Prophet Muhammad from God, and he taught him that there are 5 prayers that need to be performed on a daily basis, and he actually taught Prophet Muhammad that these are the 5 different times of the day you will be performing those prayers. So the timings, they come from God. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we in Islam, as Brother Sayyid Ali was mentioning, that in Islam, as a Muslim, we are trying to develop a stage of excellence, where a person he's always conscious about God, that God is everywhere with him, and he's always aware that everywhere he will go, that God is watching him. And that's why there's a lot of emphasis in Islam to stay away from sins, because why? God is watching you all the time. However, at the same time, keeping in mind is that it is also the nature of a believer that one of the reasons that a person has to pray 5 times a day is so that he can always and constantly remember God. Because if these 5 prayers were to be performed at only one time of the day, let's just say we perform the 5 times, all of them, accumulate all of them, pray them at one time, right in the morning, then what happens is that for the rest of the day, a person, he is so involved with his own worldly affairs, he has no time to remember God. While the 5 prayers have been scattered throughout the entire day, it brings a person always back to God. That he will, for example, the first prayer takes place at the break of dawn. Nowadays, the prayer takes place at 6 o'clock. Before the time did change, before daylight savings time came to an end, it was taking place almost around like 6:30, 6:45. So what happens is that people would come, they would perform the prayer, they would go to work. And they would work, they would stay, and regardless of where they're working at. But then what happens is that when the afternoon time comes, a person again, the call of God is made again, and he's made aware about who he is. Where does he come from? Who does he belong to? And so to build this sense and to build this consciousness and awareness within a person, this is also one of the reasons that these 5 prayers have been scattered throughout the entire day. Any other question? Yes.
How does one become an imam, and in your clergy, is there a hierarchy as say with the Catholic Church, where there are priests and bishops and cardinals?
Very good question. We don't have that kind of system. What entitles a person to become an imam is that generally you will have, a person has to go through you could say a course where he has to educate and be very educated about how to deal with people, and he has to have the basic understanding of the Quran. He has to know how to recite the Quran, understand the Quran, understand the prophetic traditions, and he's able to clearly explain them and give the message across to the audience, and also someone who can work with someone else. So that's why we don't have, and I'm fully aware of that kind of system, bishops and cardinals and so forth. I have some idea about it, but in Islam we don't have that kind of system. Very good question, thank you.
One of the questions that's often asked is, why are men and women separated during prayers and functions? One of the reasons that Muslims, if you see the way we pray in the mosque, we don't have any chairs or any furniture. It's a place where you have physical movement, where a Muslim is bowing down, prostrating to God with his forehead and nose touching the ground. And the way we stand in the prayer is shoulder to shoulder to have that sense of unity and brotherhood. And so some of those positions can be uncomfortable, or women might not feel comfortable, standing or praying right next to men, or right in front of men, and it also distracts Muslims from prayer. And that's just to have that a sense of modesty. Muslims, men pray in the front, and women tend to pray in the back of the prayer.
Actually, I just wanted to add on to the answer that he was giving. Actually, this is something that's not only existing, that does exist in Islam also. If you go to a lot of synagogues where Orthodox Judaism is still practiced till today, you will see that the men and the women are separated. You will see that happening a lot of times. You will see that most of these synagogues that we have around, they belong to Reform Jews. So that's why you do not see this taking place. But if you ever to go to a place like Israel or Jerusalem, or even in New York, there's a lot of Orthodox Jews that live there also. You will see that they have a system that even when they travel also, you will see that the men will sit in the front and the women will sit in the back. So this is not something new in Islam. A question that did come to me, was that do you think that Mark, Matthew, John, Peter, and James are, do you consider them as prophets in the New Testament, or do I think them? Actually, the only prophets that we truly believe in is the prophets that are mentioned in the Quran, and that is the chart that I showed you and I shared with you. For example, Noah, Lot, Isaac, Ishmael, in all the other prophets. This is who we believe. Any prophets that are not mentioned in the Quran or they are not mentioned in the prophetic scriptures, they are not considered as prophets. So this is, I will say this, there are a lot of other prophets. For example, we as Muslims, we believe that there are around 124,000 prophets that were sent from God. So all of them have not been mentioned. All of them have not been mentioned in the Quran, and they're not been mentioned in the prophetic traditions. However, when it comes to Islamic faiths, there's no mention of Mark, Matthew, John, or Peter. So that's why we wholeheartedly respect the other religions for them accepting them as prophets, whereas in Islam, they're not considered as prophets.
This question, I'm going to read out the question. It says here, given that Muslims have to believe in all prophets and different scriptures, such as the Old Testament, why are Muslims perceived as intolerant? This is unfortunately the crisis that we are living in today, because what happens thousands of miles away from here impacts all of us as Muslims, and unfortunately the media portrays all Muslims as being one-dimensional, intolerant, oppressors of women, extremists, which is not the case. There is a lot of diversity among Muslims. So you'll find that there's a lot, and there is also some intolerance. People tend to behave, have extremist views or take extreme actions. But as Muslims, we believe that it is a greater defamation of the teaching of Prophet Muhammad to respond with violence or aggression to any acts of provocation. For example, recently what happened in Libya with Christopher Stevens, who loved being a part of that, who wanted to work in that part of the world. And he was a friend of the Muslim community, he was a friend of the Muslims.